So, ladies and gentlemen, Ya Ali Madath, and hello to everyone else who's around the world tuning in. Welcome to today's webinar, which is entitled Urban Gardening 101. As time has passed and societies have progressed, the environment has changed immensely around us, and today we're witnessing changes in the climate, in the health system, in extreme weather patterns, and ecological instability, and many have directly impacted us and affected us. All individuals and communities have a part to play in redressing the balance of nature. Even small actions can add up to significant positive changes over time. Being conscious of our consumption is a good place to start, and as such, we're hosting today's webinar, and I hope that you will enjoy it. So today we have with us Sheena Shah, who is a dear friend of mine, who's going to be equipping us with some simple urban gardening techniques which will allow us to connect with our food system and nature at large. I'm going to hand it over to Sheena to give us a quick introduction about herself, tell us what she does and which part of the world she's in today, at this moment. Over to you, Sheena.
All right. Well, thanks, Zara, and thanks for Smiley Kenya for letting me be on this platform and just being able to share some of what I do, who I am, and help each one of you out on some of these in these times that we're in right now and how to be sustainable. So thank you so much. So I'm Sheena Shah, and I am a permaculture designer. I'm sure some of you are going to be wondering, what is this term permaculture? We're going to dive into that shortly, but essentially I'm a permaculture designer or a practitioner, and I basically use permaculture as a toolkit in my own backyard, in my life, and I started up, I was part of an NGO for the last 7 years, and we dedicated all of our time in empowering farmers and people all over East Africa in this, in permaculture design and regenerative agriculture. So that means we were educating them on how to become more sustainable, grow more biodiversity, and ensure that we were also engaging within food security systems and food production in East Africa as a whole. So I exited the NGO about 1.5 years ago, and I started my own business consulting arm called Harvesting for Good East Africa. And essentially, Harvesting for Good is providing the same skills, but within an urban approach and more simplified. So that's what we're doing right now. And it's just been 1.5 years, and we've just done lots of work all over Nairobi right now, working with homes and individual owners. And I'm now getting to share some of that right now in this time that we're in. We're not able to work remotely right now, so we're doing as much as we can virtually with some of the questions that are coming to us on how do we start a garden. And so there's no better time than now to dive into these topics. Yeah, that's a little bit about me in a nutshell.
Great, thank you, Sheena. And for those who are wondering where I am which part of the world I am in, I'm here based in Oxford, currently in the middle of exams. And my first encounter with permaculture was actually a fortunate stroke of serendipity, and it was something that I had seen on social media. I'd seen a bag of coffee that said from a permaculture farm, and I wondered what permaculture was. And so I went down a rabbit hole and trying to learn more about what permaculture was, and that led me into doing a permaculture design course in South Africa. And I've been working in farms in and out during my undergrad when I was in South Africa. So that's a little bit about me. I think maybe we should dive in straight to maybe what permaculture is. Just give a quick definition of permaculture and how we can apply it to urban gardening. And I'll let Sheena give us a little brief on that, and then I'll chime in as we go along.
So permaculture, first of all, derives from permanent agriculture. We're designing systems for long-term resilience. So I'm going to simplify it a little bit and not use too much of the technical terms. We're basically using this as a toolkit to grow more biodiversity, as I mentioned before. So it's a whole systems approach. We are basically mimicking nature's patterns and designing from there. And so when we're talking a little bit now in this platform, we're going more urban, simplified, right out our front door or back door. We're talking about how do we sustain ourselves using all the resources that we have available, nothing fancy, just mimicking what we have, not disrupting what is there already, and just using the existing patterns in nature to design from. So that's how I explain it within this conversation that we're having this afternoon. What do you think, Zara?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I like to think of permaculture as a creative design process, as a lot of the emphasis is on the design process. And what guides permaculture is the three core ethics, which is care for the earth, care for people, and fair share. And these are also underpinned by 12 principles, which we will not dive into just yet. We'll briefly touch on a few, keeping in the theme of urban design and urban gardening. But I think there are a lot of parallels that we can draw from permaculture and the teachings of Islam and the teaching of Hazrat Imam. For those who are not Ismaili and tuning in, His Highness the Aga Khan is our 49th hereditary spiritual Imam who guides us in our day-to-day activities. And I would like to just, and he often also points to the importance of caring for the environment. And I'd like to share a quote in Ottawa 2013 where he said, and I quote, "Our faith constantly reminds us to observe and be thankful for the beauty of the world and the universe around us. And our responsibility and obligation as good stewards of God's creation is to leave the world in a better condition than we found it." I think this sets the perfect tone for our webinar today. And also, as I mentioned earlier, draw some parallels to permaculture and its ethics, which is care for the earth, care for the environment, and fair share, which have been part of our faith for such a long time. Sheena, do you want to dive straight into what we have planned for today?
Yeah. So, how do you start up a garden at home? We have space available. We either live in an apartment or a home that either has a bit of a piece of land that you could cultivate on, or you've got a balcony or patio, just space available. So we're trying to address the needs for that. What do we need to? How do we show up for that? What do we need to start up a little garden in any space available? You can have a vertical space on a wall that you could use up. So that's what we want to address today. Is how do we start up a very simple garden and start slow? One of the principles of permaculture is start slow and steady, and that's what we want to do. We don't want to go, and just cultivate whatever we think we should, but instead just start from just the basics of everyday use herbs. So that we're just going to focus a little bit on the just simple tools that you need to do this. And if people have questions, I know there's a Q&A, I see it on the screen here. If people have questions, just things that you've already done, you want more clarity, you want us to address some of those issues, challenges, you want to share successes, we'll also address some of that and just talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I think we already have two questions in, but we can address that as we go along.
Yeah, I think this can be at a later stage, because one of them is where can I obtain rooting powder? The person who asked this, could you just emphasize a little bit on this, what you're looking for? And then we have another question. I'm looking for olive seedlings. Where can I get them? We can probably go into that a bit later as well. For now, we're just going to like basic gardening 101. So, right now we're also spending so much time in our kitchens. We're getting really kitchen savvy. We're trying to learn to cook together, get creative with recipes, become more healthier as everyone at home is. Set this example for our family members. So to walk out your front door and be able to, first of all, forage for your own herbs or vegetables is such a gratifying experience. I can't emphasize more on that. Zara, you're in the UK right now. How far is it for you to get access to some kind of like decent organic or natural produce?
It's actually not very far, because many people here already plant lots of stuff. I love rosemary, and the park has lots of that, so which has been great. I think during this time now, with the crisis that we're facing, there's been so much of like food citizenship, where farmers, we're having access to fresh food from farmers. So by the countryside here, it's been quite nice, and everyone's growing little things. So not too far.
Yeah, but we're so lucky in Nairobi. We have access to deliveries of fresh veg and fruit or produce, for instance. But I think we might be ordering way too much of it. It's also how long are we going to have access to that kind of produce, the quantities. It's a lot of work on the ground for farmers now to be able to produce these mass amounts for our needs right now, when we're all spending more time indoors. So I say try grow as much as you can outside. You got a bit of sunlight on your windowsills or just any space available that has enough direct sunlight. That's all you need. You don't need any fancy tools. You can use old boxes, buckets, tires, you name it. You may have some old pots lying around. Just tidy them up, and you can grow in that. I'm going to show you a few pictures later of some of the stuff I have in my garden, and then I also have a few pots in my kitchen, and I'll just show you what I've done there. And the size of the pot matters. We also want to make sure we're trying to grow things as organic as possible, so we're using more compost. At the moment in Nairobi, there are so many nurseries that are open. One that I would recommend is Plants Galore, which is right up Riviera Mall in Gigiri. So just after Village Market is Riviera Mall. And it's in the same entrance, but on the right-hand side, there's another access point and takes you to a barrier, and basically you'll see Plants Galore, or just off future. They're stocking up enough herbs, pots, plants. I'm not just talking about gardening with just herbs, but be able to like now start putting just your, air purifiers, your plants around you. There's also nothing more humbling than stepping out when you're feeling a little stressed out. You need a little break. Is to just go out in your garden, be able to see some color with flowers. Flowers are added pollinators, as an added boost to your garden. So make sure you have pollinators. Right now, it's also Bee Awareness Week. It's the bee to promote these bees and these beneficial insects, the pollinators. Grow more flowers that have deep, like violets and blues. And this can be a little bit out in your garden, so not too close to your home if you're afraid of the bees, kids as well. And these colors basically attract those beneficial insects, and they're able to then feed off that plant and be able to then pollinate. And that's what we need right now. So it's Bee Awareness Week. If you're not aware, look it up. Educate yourselves a little bit more in that area, because we do need to integrate flowers. So one thing with permaculture is permaculture, it derives from permanent agriculture. So we're trying to design systems for long-term resilience. We're designing according to how the sun falls, to how the wind blows, to how water runoff is on our land. So if you're growing on a piece of land and you've got a slope, we're looking at that as a design aspect. So you want to be water flows. We're thinking around sustainability and how do we harness water from our roofs, from at home as well. And so most of us here on this platform want to grow in pots. If there are any more questions, just
yeah. So we have a few questions that are coming in, but I thought maybe just maybe we can start with like the fundamentals for somebody. Maybe like a student who's at in their room like me, or somebody that lives in an apartment. What are the first key steps that they need to be aware of for them to first dive into like growing their own food? So do I first need to look for a good pot, some good soil, good seeds? What is the absolute fundamental steps that I need to take? And I'm sure many people who are tuning in have those questions. We have some questions like what fertilizer to use. So maybe
so I'm going to do
that. Yeah.
All right, perfect. What I'm going to do, because some of these questions are a little bit more for a bit later stage, talk about, we're going to fundamentals. I'm going to do a screen share. I'm just going to show you a little bit about stuff that I'm already growing. Where is my, I had it up a while ago. Right here. I'm going to just show you a few pictures I have of my own garden, and just show you what we've done over the last, just as my business, what we do. So for instance, this this client of mine had a spot open in her home. She's got like a space available on the top floor, and essentially it was an abandoned balcony. And there are lots of these high-rise buildings, like just so many homes all over, and so bare. So nice to see like how bare hers was, and then also all the homes around. And so basically what we did is we worked with her. She wanted a space that would be a place where her daughter and her could come up and just spend more time after school or in their free time, and for a daughter to kind of understand how food is grown, also put her hands in the dirt, as you see in this picture. And the idea was just to create these raised beds. So we can all do this. All we need is just some wood and stuff that's lying around that we already have, some scrap material. Build up some raised beds if we can. They don't have to be too big. This one was just decent enough. We made about, I think, 4 or 5 of these around the entire balcony area. And enough, we drill some holes in the bottom so there would be enough drainage for that water when you're watering the raised bed there. And you can grow a variety of different things. So I was just saying that in permaculture or in agriculture, you always see people just growing one thing. One of the staples is maize. You'll just see maize, rows of just maize. But what happens in that polyculture system is that when you get a pest in there, the entire system is completely it's done. You can't really use that maize anymore. Farmers have to start again. So in permaculture, we are basically relieving that stress. We're saying grow multiple things. So if you Google companion planting, you'll be able to get a full list of different plants that go together. So don't just go out there and grow multiple things together. Just know what goes well with each other. So we educate our clients on that as we design their gardens on their rooftops or in their homes or whatever. So with multiple things growing, and each plant is functional because it helps in pest management as well. We don't want to spray any chemicals. That's another thing. Is we don't want to take in chemicals that are going to rid us of nutrients and also make us sick. So we want to be able to know where our food comes from. Sometimes the seeds we get here are not actually organic, but we can raise them as organic as we can. So we'll go through fundamentals of like at a later stage we'll do a fundamental intro on how to use plants as natural pest repellents. So I'll just touch on that a little bit just now, but that's what this is. So in the same area, we use these old crates. I was saying, you don't have to go and buy yourself fancy pots and all, but these are old crates that our client had. And instead of tossing them, we said, why don't we use them? So we lined them with all these sheets that she actually had. These are just bubble wraps. Nothing went to waste. We just used them up, made some holes. So there's enough drain. And, this is an early stage where we put all the seedlings in. Now it's like abundant. And they're growing multiple things in this one area. Chilies, parsley, rosemary, lemongrass, lemon balm.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just curious to know what soil you used to fill the crate in.
Yeah. So what we did is we got some potting soil. I really do trust plants galore when it comes down to soil. We often get, when we need like a massive amount of soil or compost, we just get it from Plants Galore because I trust them as a provider for that. So it's just a mixture of clay, compost, and some sandy soil in there as well. Because herbs also they'll do well in full sunlight, but you also want to know, you want to make sure the soil is also very, is going to be good for that plant. So we're not adding anything else, but just potting soil and compost. Sometimes they will also provide you with bone meal, and so we sometimes add bone meal into the soil just to give it some more nourishment. But otherwise, enough compost, just half and half a ratio. And even the seedlings there, like they are grown as organic as possible, so you're going to get enough nutrients already in that seedling, in that plant, and that's what we add back into the crates or pots or wherever we're growing.
Great. We actually have a few questions. And that is.
When I'm on a screen share, I can't actually see
that. Okay, yeah. So I think I'll spell out the questions. So we have Sarah. Sarah is asking, would feeding my plants with leftover water from boiled beans help add nitrogen to the soil? I'm concerned that the soil I have is not very nutrient rich, and I do not have the space on my balcony to create my own compost or soil.
Yeah, you can actually make worm juice. Zara, do you know about that? Do you know vermicompost? Do you want to touch a little bit on that?
You should go for it.
For people in homes that don't have the space and have. Oop, I didn't hear you there. I think you're in mute.
You're frozen? Okay, now we have you back.
Oh, can you hear me
Yeah.
now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I was just saying, you know, for people who don't have the space for composting, Zara, are you aware of vermicomposting? Do you want to touch a little bit on vermicomposting and how easy that is if in any little space available for this question?
My knowledge on that isn't broad enough, so you should go for it.
All right, so you know, if you don't have a space for compost bin, what you need to do is you can actually get a handful of worms like red wrigglers. Don't be grossed out by them; they actually are very helpful. These red wrigglers, just add them into a bucket, and you feed them with all the scraps. So like your food scraps, cardboard, any like newspaper material. Eggshells, whatever, all your food scraps, just nothing cooked, no meat in there. Basically, you're making a worm juice just from that. So any of what the worms are feeding on, the excreted nutrients, you can actually add that back into your soil, and that adds even more nutrients if you want. Good question on the bean. You can actually use water when it's cool, and you can use it back into the soil. It doesn't want to provide all the nitrogen back in there, but it will help. But if you're beans, you can actually grow beans in your balcony. There are people here who have actually turned their entire, you know, apartment balconies into real like food forests and have grown like maize, beans. So that's like a guild you're actually setting up to provide all the nutrients back in the soil. So beans are grow as many beans as you can because that adds back nitrogen and the needed nutrients into the soil, and you get beans as your food. If that answers your question. You also want to make sure you're covering your soil. So I'm going to show you. I'm just going to go through these pictures again because there's a lot of stuff that can come up from here. Just observe, because something about permaculture is observation and the real photos that we've taken from our work. And this is the best time to bring your kids out and your family out. And this is a group that worked at Green Spoon, and their kids. They had a piece of land available right next to just next to their kitchen, and so we grew all this stuff. And you can see the ground is actually mulched. We may see some more photos, but the kids are enjoying all the harvest from all that work that we did for them last year. But back to these raised beds, you can see multiple things happening. We've got also these flowering plants like daisies are good pollinators as well. So add more flowers. You can see the sizes of pots as we go on. We also used, if you can see these kikapus, these baskets that our client had available in the house, and we're like, you know what, you can actually don't toss them, you don't use them to grow. So we lined all of these materials with sheets, plastic bags, whatever she had available, and you can see lavender. These are lavender flowers. So yeah, everything's reused, and just make sure you're lining them and adding holes at the bottom for drainage. And you can see after a few months, that's what happened from literally just adding seedlings there to this photo where now they have even more. This is just literally a few months later, but now they have a lot more coming up. You want to make sure that you're also, every time you're harvesting, you are also you're doing this thing with crop rotation. So you're not just putting one particular thing in there all the time. You are every season, every time you're harvesting, you're adding other stuff in it. But the soil gets replenished when you're adding more and more plants. If you keep adding one particular thing all the time, your soil is going to deplete. So even when we talk about organic farming, it doesn't really mean that's the best thing because that's still monoculture and it's just adding one crop over and over, and the soils aren't getting nutrients. So even in a small scale, make sure you are adding a variety of different things. So get yourself seedlings if you want to foster growth. You can see all the bags are full. Lavender's grown pretty well there from those previous photos. And then this is my garden now, and I put lots of different things. These are old like succulents, flowers, ferns, palms, all in like bucket pots, you know, plastic pots that I've had for years. This is a little new. In this time, you know, grow like stuff like lavender, like very rooted vegetables or rooted herbs. So right now we're also facing so much uncertainty, also just anxiety, stress. You know, go outside and plant some lavender and be able to go there and like just get a whiff of that smell, because it just calms you down. So lavenders also have those really pretty purples and violets, and they attract those beneficial bees that we're talking about. And so again, it's not that close to my house, it's just outside of here, and you know, the bees won't really come in, so it's not going to affect me at all, but it's going to create this abundance around. So that's what we need. So you're going to see the size of the pots as well. Make sure when you go to your nursery, you're interacting with the people you're buying from. Don't just buy a pot and a plant. Make sure they're also telling you what kind of a pot you're going to need, because that plant's going to grow, and you want to make sure that the plant. So yeah, there's lavender, and we've got the palm, little palm next to it is an air purifier. You can put it in your. It's actually here behind me as well, and basically that is.
We have a few questions regarding what
you have a
we
question?
can grow in Nairobi. So one of the questions is, what do you find grows the best in Nairobi's climate? And I think just adding on to, because we're talking about compost before, one of the question is, which fertilizer can help? I want one that can be used for all vegetables. I am already growing a few veggies and fruits. That's from Salima and Shani. So we have two questions. The first is, what grows best in Nairobi's climate? Maybe we can give it context with the seasons, and what fertilizers can help.
Okay. In terms of your, oops, trying to get the question out of my screen share. So if you go to your local nursery, just ask them for compost. Again, I really prefer using Plants Galore for my compost and my soil. Quality of it, you know, most nurseries will have compost. If you just ask them for ready compost, they'll give you a bag. But you want to make sure, because you will often get seeds just coming up. If you're okay with that, well and good. If not, then often again, Plants Galore just serve that purpose of getting everything there from plants, pots, the right soil, compost. Ask questions. You want to make sure that you're getting the right stuff, because some of these nurseries may have the compost, but you can't trust all of it. So in terms of fertilizer, I'm only using compost. You can get bone meal. That Plants Galore also they do into my I mix it up in my compost. It provides all the nutrients. The mulching I mentioned, mulching is another technique for adding nutrients back in and protecting your soil. So if you're stacking up like onto your in your pot around the plants, it basically adds, it breaks down into nutrients back into the soil. So it's providing all that essential goodness. And then it's also, what happens is if your pots are out there in the sun, or your plants, the sun eats up all the moisture, and so basically your plant's not going to do well, and you'll just give up because you try everything. So always cover the soil with grass clippings, and you know, if you're sweeping like leaves, just keep that aside, dry it, and put it all just put it around your plants, and that protects it. That's a good way of protecting your soil and adding back nutrients. If you also again, companion planting helps growing different plants that go well with each other. So for example, onions are a really good companion and a pest repellent. Like spring onions with, for example, your tomatoes, and you put in someone just talked about dhania, which is like coriander. If you put coriander, onion, and your tomatoes are going to go really well because that's a companion, and you're going to get this extra food around. So that's food security right there. What the coriander also does is provides like a ground cover. So again, that's like a mulch. So even here in this photo that I have on my screen is mint, and mint is a really good ground cover, and we all can grow it. It grows everywhere. You can get cuttings, and you can also share this. A part of permaculture's ethics that Zara mentioned earlier is share. When you get an abundance of mint, you can actually share these other people and they can grow it. If you grow mint around all of your plants, that's another like a pest repellent, and it protects. So if that answers your question in terms of nutrients back in the soil with fertilizer, is make sure you're asking what kind of compost this is and you're getting the right stuff.
Okay, we have a comment saying that somebody can't hear very well. So maybe you want to speak closer to your microphone. We also have another question regarding to cocoa peat, mix of cocoa peat and manure, and if that can be used as potting soil. So we have lots of questions that are also specific. And also a question of where we get worms from in Nairobi. I'm assuming this person is in Nairobi.
Yep.
Okay, now I think you'll be able to see the questions down.
Okay, no, I can see them still. I can see them on the top there. Okay, so in terms, cocoa peat. For people who can't hear me, can some of you just let us know if you can hear me well now? Definitely don't want to be talking when you. Zara, can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, people can't know. Cocoa peat is one of them. You'll find in seedlings. There's actually cocoa seedlings, and that's a really good nutrient base for plants. So if you're able to get some cocoa peat, you don't have to put a whole load. It's just like a handful of cocoa peat is good to mix in with your compost and then your potting soil. If you see pests around your veggies or your herbs, and don't use this on plants or flowers, but you just chop up some onions, chilies and onions, and then
we lost you there for a second.
Sieve it in the morning or after at least 7 or 8 hours, and just spray that sparingly under your sparingly, like about 3 times a week. You don't need to drain the whole thing, just sparingly spray, and that also protects your plants from any kind of pests that you find. But like grow some mint around your vegetables, some lemon balm, some chilies, and some onions. Those are really good, and those are some of those, and then you can put them around your plants. And then chives. I have here. Garlic chives are really good for pest management and pest control. You can see the size of the pot. That's a kind of medium-sized pot. They grow pretty well and pretty quickly. And you just basically cut the stems gently and chives all around your garden with your plants as well, because it's another pest repellent. A lot of people in the wet season find that they get these black flies on them, even white fly. You just spray what I just said, the concoction of chili and onion spray around them, and that should do the trick, like in just helping. Another powder, if you're able to get, is diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth is basically the diatoms. They come from, and basically that if you just sprinkle it when you water your plants, you sprinkle it around, it basically helps in protecting from flies, and also in the wet season we see a lot of slugs and snails, and so that powder they don't really like. It's like when we put salt over slugs, they like that. So if you add this white powder, this diatomaceous earth, around your vegetables and herbs only, it protects it from any kind of slugs and snails, which is just, it can be a nuisance to have those around, and they eat up everything. So on your spinach especially, and your succumas, if you need some, just write to me at some point as well. But there are a lot of people selling that here as well.
Great. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in because a few people still can't hear you.
Chilies and onions.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. Okay, so even though for people who can't hear me, what we can do if the platform already has all of your email addresses, I can actually put together like a handout of all the stuff I'm talking about in terms of concoction for your plants, like what you can make that's easy in your kitchen, like the onions and chili that I talked about, because someone asked to repeat that. So I can do that, and I can also send you a little handout on how to make compost if you have the space available at home. And the diatomaceous earth, someone just asked about the diatomaceous earth. I'm just going to write it down quickly here.
Yeah, and we have some general questions with regards to just
diatomaceous earth. Coffee grounds. Yeah, you can sprinkle coffee. As far as research goes, coffee grounds can be seriously too strong if you just put it in there directly. If you can mix it in your and just putting it in plants, that's much better. So if you have a compost already, if you make your own compost, just throwing those coffee grounds in there instead, let it break down slowly helps. But yeah, you can make sure you're mixing. So ants, diatomaceous earth is really good. I mentioned that. I will definitely send out a handout to the Smiley Kenya platform, and then diatomaceous earth is really good for ants. So if you have ants, you just sprinkle a little bit of that on the ground or where the plants are, and it basically just these bugs. So yeah, I'm so sorry. Some of you are saying audio is a bit poor. I'm actually have a speaker on and I'm talking as loud as I can.
I think you're cutting out.
We will share a handout. Okay.
Yeah, and I think there are also some general questions with regards to care for plants, like somebody's bamboo plant turned yellow, or oftentimes you grow something on your windowsill and it tends to die, and you get really frustrated because you're trying to do as much as you can to look after this plant. And I remember we talked about this in one of our other lives. So maybe we could quickly give a brief on perhaps sometimes it's just a matter of taking it out of the windowsill because the plant is too stressed out. But we could touch up on just general tips to care for plants indoors.
Yeah, sometimes the yellowing is occurring because either it's being overwatered, or the soil has some issues in there, or it needs to be transferred in a bigger pot for space. Sometimes the roots get a little bit clogged in there in the bigger plants, and keep moving them around in different areas of the house as well to see whether it's the light that's affecting it, or is it just that it's too overwatered. So some of these house plants, they don't require a lot of water, so you just water them like twice a week and that's about it. But there's also a typical way of doing that. So in my handout, I'll definitely include some of that, so you have something to read about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for the aphids, you just talked about aphids there. Yeah, that is it's not a powder. It's literally you just chop up onions and chili, the actual onions and chilies, not chili powder, and you basically a handful of each is good. Put in a jug of water, steep it there for like about 7 or 8 hours or just overnight. Sieve that and just spray it sparingly under the leaves of the plants. You'll often see that. So just spray. You don't need to drain the entire plant with it. You just spray it, and it like 2 or 3 times a week is good enough. And just keep monitoring that. You want to make sure you're also mulching that plant. So again, adding that dried matter on your plant, it protects the soil and the so more of that. So again, so there's a dried stack of matter on that plant, which protects it from bugs. So time as well. And then, do you have any advice on it for an ecology student looking to get involved in the permaculture? Okay, for that last question, that could be separately instead. We'll just leave mine and Zara's email address, and then you can just get in touch with us separately, and we'll help you out with that particular
maybe
question.
I can just chime in on that.
What can we spray on lemon and orange trees?
Sorry, yeah, just to there's a bit of a lag. Rakib Vali, thank you for the question. I think it's a great way to also just get the youth involved in the permaculture space. And so I would recommend, I mean, he can write to us, but I would also recommend whenever you get the chance to travel outside, to find permaculture farms, and often they're more than happy to have volunteers come in. And that's one of the approaches that I used when I was in South Africa. I just went into one of the farms and I emailed the lady saying that I would love to come and work. And I got to learn so much about a lot of the things that we're talking about now. So that's a great platform or a great way to enter into that space. So thanks, Rakib, for the question.
Yeah, but we'll definitely send you some more information because there's a lot. What does it mean when there are holes on leaves on indoor plants? Is that to do with light and water? Yes. Too, I would say you need to just keep repositioning those plants back and forth and seeing the problem. Sometimes you could also have kind of bug eating or munching on those leaves. So again, the diatomaceous earth, it cannot be used. So don't use that on any plant, on herbs and vegetables. If you use the diatomaceous earth powder that I've talked about on your orchids or your flowers, they're not going to survive. So don't bother putting any of that powder up there. But I will do like some research on the flowers, plants, and the orchid, and the Smiley Kenya platform, and they can send that out to some of you that have asked that question.
There was a question on orchids. Where can I get orchid soil from? And my orchid plant
I'll find that out, and I'll definitely send you some feedback on that. Yeah. What is the best way to kill or remove weeds in a garden? Talking about an entire garden having weeds, if you have stuff growing around the garden, just make sure you're adding a stack of that mulch. In permaculture, we actually don't consider we don't consider it as a weed. It's beneficial sometimes. It's protecting your soil. But if you have multiple, weeds growing all over, you want to make sure that your grass is not patchy along in the lawn area. If that's happening around your plants, you want to make sure mulching you're talking about that actually prevents too much weeding, so you don't have to put all that energy into like taking out weeds all the time.
Yeah, I think the mulch is a really good technique.
Slugs.
If it's on open, like you mentioned earlier on, garlic chives are great. I remember in one of like the fruit forest, we just threw in garlic chives around, which is quite great. We also have another question: how to get rid of slugs in the garden? He's like,
yeah, that question's come up a lot. Time around when it's wet and rainy, the slugs are gonna be everywhere on your walls. I mean, everywhere. For the plants, however, the diatomaceous earth is really good that I've been. If you sprinkle this earth, this diatomaceous powder on, not on your, just don't sprinkle it on your plants or your flowers. I'm just talking about this. You need to just do this on your vegetables or your herbs. You just, after watering, you just sprinkle a little bit on that just by the soil. That basically protects that layer where slugs and bugs just don't like a wet surfaces. So you want to try and just repel that part off. And it's also really natural. There's no chemical components in there. No, the last question. Can you use only compost as a planter soil for seedlings? It should be your base, but it's not your full. That's not your full planter soil. You are literally just mixing in soil and you're mixing in soil and potting soil. Soil and compost. You're potting soil and compost. And that seedling also contains a lot of compost already, so you already have enough. But you're just adding a little bit of compost and more potting soil, mixing it all together, and that's it. That's your base for which flowers. Okay, which flower repel insects or flowers. So herbs are good. If you're putting in more chili, chives, onions, garlic, all of these basically are good to plant around all your pots, your plants, your vegetables, herbs. These are good natural pest repellents for plant management. Okay, I'm really sorry that you're not able to hear me well. I don't know if it's just because there's just so many people and it's just basically the connection is going on and off. But yeah, I will put this in a handout for you, and you should receive this literally next week with more information I can also share on some of these questions and comments coming to us. All right, anything else that's in? Are the garden slugs edible? I mean, I personally wouldn't eat them, but if you, that's something that I'm not going to really address on this platform. So it's a little funny. Are you going to answer that one?
I wouldn't be as adventurous. I think let's just keep to our vegetables. Yeah.
Yeah. EM organisms in your compost, you can use that. Yes, you can, but you don't necessarily have to. You're not making a huge amount of it. I mean, in my compost heap, I am basically also I'm just literally putting food scraps, green your plants that you're chopping down. No fenced. I'm not putting any thorny bushes or trees in there. Literally stuff that and was literally it just breaks down. It's a small amount. I'm able to make enough of compost from there. It's pretty good stuff. So you don't need to add in too many things if it's not a big enough compost heap if it's just at home.
We have a question on hydroponic system.
These questions are a little techy on the hydroponics. I'm not going to go into that now because we're talking about gardening 101. Yeah, we have we've done a little bit, but I'm not going to go into that now because it's super technical, and we're talking a little bit more on basic gardening. Okay, I'm going to go through a little bit of my photos here just to show you how you can grow some of these herbs. So people who I think the questions that are coming are people that already started, but people who haven't started, you can do this all by yourself. It's not this is parsley. We all eat a lot of parsley and coriander, and these are everyday herbs. So I would say start with your everyday herbs first of all. When you're starting, you can get the ready seedlings or you can get seeds. If you're getting seeds, you have to start in a like smaller pot and then when you get that first germinate, like just the seed sprouting, after a few weeks, you're able to then transplant some of these seedlings into bigger, larger pots, and then they start to come up into full matured plants like this one. But this one is directly from a seedling, and when we want to, I would recommend seedlings. Again, the size of the pot matters. Parsley, peas are heavy feeders sometimes, and they require a bigger space because they really come out and they bloom. And so this is a medium-sized pot for this particular flat leaf parsley that I like to eat. And it's just easy to just cut it and let them regrow. But just make sure you're harvesting enough of it as well. Thyme is a really good one at this time as well, because it's healing. It has a great aroma, and you can marinate this in your meats, veggies, your potatoes when you're roasting them. And basically, they don't need a huge pot. These are just small pots hanging there, and they some of these herbs that need a lot of natural light, so they need to be in full sun. They don't like to be overwatered. So I haven't really moved my stuff around even in the rain because we're getting enough sun anyway. These ones are quite old, but they've only just decreased in the growth because of the rains that we've had. But you can move them back in when it rains, so that you're allowing them to thrive. These are flowers. Again, they're not in. These are really pretty flowers. These are pentas, and I've just put them in medium-sized pots to the ground when they've grown fully. But I'm just literally maintaining the growth by just pruning some of those stems, so that are just a little bit wide, but more just upwards, so not into a bush. So you can maintain that even if you put it in small pots like I have here. So all that is literally integrated with herbs, and my veggies in my front yard is all in pots because of all the existing trees. I wasn't able to put anything in the ground, and I'm able to grow all of my veggies, and, well, most of my herbs in pots around this area, and grow my veggies in an area that I have actually space to do it in the ground. So again, I'm using old boxes. This one is all mint, and you can see a papaya popo seedling coming up there. And basically that has sprouted from the compost. But yeah, all this mint around the box is basically ground cover for all the stuff that is happening around that box. So in that box, there's also some spinach. And it's a salty, like spinach type salad. It's delicious. So all that is just grown in like one box. And then palms. Palms are a great aesthetic look to our home. And it's also it's something that just looks good when you go out and you want to have that homey feel. I think palms are amazing. Again, make sure they're in like big pots so they have space to grow and thrive. So I would include in veggie gardens, herb gardens, because it just looks really good, and it gives you that privacy as well if you're living in a compound.
We have a personal question. Your favorite plant?
Yeah. My favorite. I like herbs, so I would choose rosemary. Rosemary is just so beneficial because it's, first of all, it's great for the brain. So if you go outside and you just like get that whiff of a rosemary smell first thing in the morning or multiple times in the day, it's just great for your memory. So that'd be like that. My fear is losing my memory, and so I think rosemary I just need it. And then you can use it in your veggies, your meats, your potatoes, whatever. Like it just tastes so good. And it has a great smell, and it can be a hedge or just a little plant, and it just grows so beautiful and it's really aesthetic. That's my favorite herb,
I think I'm going to agree with you on that one. I think rosemary is great. It's also great, like keep pests away.
Yeah.
I think I also really like succulents. They're just so nice and easy. They're so pretty. You barely have to water them. For people that are, not that we should be lazy, but they're just great to have, especially during dry climates. We have a question with regards to sun. What would you recommend for a garden without much sun?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I would say put more air purifiers, like Camedora. I'll add this stuff in the fires and plants that are good for the indoors. You, as long as you're getting some direct light, it's pretty good. Peace lilies are also really good. They first of all, they flower all the time. Just need it next to the window so they're getting a bit of light. They don't need any sun. They're good for the air, and they just look so aesthetic and pretty. If you're growing herbs, they could do well in just with direct light with no sun. But most herbs do require sunlight, so they need the heat. But there could be some veggies that you can grow. So I will definitely add this in the handout that will be sent to you with more tips on that.
Some of these questions
Okay.
in terms of propagating succulents, for example, that would be a nice way to, that's something you would need to show visually, I suppose. But there are tons of videos that I've seen on propagating succulents that are out there.
Yeah.
So I would go on YouTube.
I live in Mombasa. Yeah, I'm just reading out this question. I live in Mombasa. What plants kind of soil for that hot climate? For the coast, there's actually there are so many permaculture projects out on the coast actually, called the Barefoot Solutions Eco Lodge, and those guys have really done a good job on like creating permaculture garden and work with communities, and they're able to grow a lot. So the kind of soil you have out there is sandy, and if you're adding, compost to that and you mill, you are able to actually grow some good herbs in there. Of course, you'd look at salt. So you got to do some research. If you have someone who's close by, who's a good soil analyst, and come in and I tell you what to grow in that specific. We haven't done much work out there. I haven't personally done work out on the coast, but we have run shops out there. But there are specific projects out there that are actually doing this and promoting permaculture or agriculture out there, and they're able to grow a lot of different things. Okay, Salima here is really engaged. I'm interested in doing a multi-story garden, how to go about it. Okay, multi-story garden, that's a really technical question. I think you'd have to get in touch with me or Zara directly, so we can help you a little bit on that. I wouldn't want to go into that.
Is just what you have,
like, Yeah.
Always
there are yeah. I was gonna say, like, in your spaces available, you can also grow creepers. Passion fruit creepers are really good. You can grow. Someone did a whole butternut creeper, and yeah, basically it's just like a whole wall of butternut and passion fruit, and all these do really well. So you want to make use of that, put some creepers in there as well, and you have lots of abundance. You don't need all the space available to put all these things.
Great. We have Salima Ishan,
If anyone wants.
who's keeping with the permaculture principles and is willing to share her rosemary. Thank you, Salima.
Passion fruit and watermelon. Yeah, watermelon is such a great one because it's a ground cover. So if you're able to put in watermelon seedlings with some of those vegetables, you're going to get watermelon, but it's also going to protect your soil from any from the sun, taking away nutrients. You want to do that. But for people, again, who haven't done any kind of gardening or are new to this, just start small. Go to your nursery, engage with the people that are working there. Don't just buy pots and plants as you. Just your everyday herbs to start off with. So your rosemary, your parsley, your coriander, chili. Get some of these seedlings and just ask the person that you're buying from what kind of pots you'll need. So some of these require medium size so that the growth is successful. You don't really want to grow it in a small pot and then having to deal with then moving, and then when you move plants frequently, you're also shocking them, and sometimes they may not actually survive that. So you want to make sure you're not moving plants all over the place, but you're getting the right stuff from the get-go, and making sure you're observing enough on the success of that plant, how much sun it will need, water. Make sure you're maintaining the growth really well.
Great.
But also, like, getting your hands back into the soil as well is just really profound. It's therapeutic. Getting your kids involved in that whole process as well is therapeutic.
Yeah, I think there's no better time now, but I would just would like to emphasize the fact that I don't think this should be a thing that we should start doing only because of the pandemic, but carry it into the future to create truly regenerative food systems and environments that we can surround ourselves with. I don't think we have any more questions now. I would like to thank everyone for their time and for joining us here today. Sheena, do you have a few maybe closing thoughts? I think there's a bit of a delay.
Yeah, peanuts are good. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, one of those questions is peanuts. Peanuts are really good ground cover as well. It's pretty good. It protects your soil, adds in more nitrogen in there as well. And so that's something we also do with farmers when we're working with them. We promote that. So that's a good thing that you already tried that and you're getting a good growth. Yeah.
I'd also maybe, for those listening and those who are interested for more, can find you on your Facebook page, and we can keep this conversation going.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm happy to just send more information on our handout, and then the organizers for this webinar can send it out to you guys with more information. But I apologize for the audio or the connect really helped. But I hope some of you that could hear me well. But I'll add in some of the stuff that we've just received from the questions into a handout, and it'll be pretty useful for some of you guys to do it more practically and
Great. Thank you so much. I think that marks the end of our webinar. So thank you all for joining, and I hope it has been helpful. But see you next time, maybe. Yeah. And thank you, Sheena, so much for sharing your time with us.
Yeah. So thank you as well.
Right.
Thanks to you, Smiley, for having me on here as well.
It's our pleasure. All right, then. Take care.